Hello everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. Today I've got the Glock 23 Gen 5 sitting here on the table. Please don't forget to check out our website. Go to our affiliates page. You'll find discount codes for things like Mantis Axe and Core belts. Link to that cool little bore light that we use for lighting up the barrels. Use those links. It will often save you money, never will cost you any additional money, and helps the channel. Thank you. This one here is chambered in .40 Smith & Wesson. And it seems like every time we talk about the Glock 19, Glock 17, somebody will ask about the .40 equivalents. So in this case, this is roughly the .40 equivalent of a Glock 19. So it's their compact size, kind of fits in the middle of the size lineup. One interesting thing about this, the Gen 5s are a little wider because they have ambi slide stop slide release, but the .40s actually have a wider slide. So the overall dimensions of this is it's 7.28 front to back. With the flush mag in it, it's 5.08 inches tall. And the overall thickness is 1.34, but the slide is 1.08. And the 9mm equivalents, it's 1.0. And that wasn't true of the Gen 4s. So the Gen 4s, you could put a 23 in a 19 holster and it would fit perfectly. But with the Gen 5s, the 23 will not fit in all other Glock 19 holsters, and it won't necessarily fit in Gen 4 holsters. There's a few manufacturers that are making holsters that are designed to tolerate both, but from a holster compatibility perspective, if you've got a Gen 4 23 and you've been swapping it in and out of your Glock 19 holster, and you decide to go to the Gen 5, you may lose that ability. Other than that, they're very dimensionally similar across the generations. The weight on this is 26.67 with an empty bag like you see it here. And the magazine holds 13 rounds, which is 2 fewer than the 9mm equivalent. But like all the double stack Glocks, you can put the larger mag from the full-size Glock Gen 4, the full-size .40 cal. Or the only fun stick I'm aware of that Glock makes for .40 is a 22 round. And they'll work just as well interchangeably. So you do have the ability to up your capacity for backup mags and things like that, but you get that compact grip when you have the flush magazine in there. You know, it's not a very tall grip. This is a fairly easy gun, just like the Glock 19, a fairly easy gun to conceal and hide. The Gen 5 features adds the NDLC coating, which actually looks pretty nice. Sticks with the single slot Picatinny rail that's been on Glock for a long time. The aftermarket has well adapted to it, so there's really no issues with getting accessories for it. And your typical Glock U-dot sights, which of course, like all Glock sights, are easily replaceable. And you can put any Glock sights on this gun, so you can do night sights or whatever else you want. There is an MOS version, an optics-ready version of this available. This particular one in my hand is not, and that makes about a $100 difference. So the MSRP on this is around $550, and it's around $650 for the MOS version. And Glock doesn't actually publish MSRP, but they do enforce MAP, minimum advertised pricing. So when you see them advertised online, you're pretty much seeing what's effectively the MSRP. And then some different companies, you add it to your cart and you can see a lower price, things like that. So to go to the optics ready in these, you're going to add about $100. In that case, if you're going to do an optic, you want to do that up front because it's a lot cheaper than having the slide milled. If you're not an optics interested person, you can save $100, go with this, and then just put the sights on it you want, or just use the sights that come with it. I have pretty good luck with the Glock sights. Front and rear serrations, and the front serrations are very usable, very easy to get to, but they are blended in well, so they're not going to chafe or cause any issues. But when you go to get them, they're right there and easy to get a hold of. And of course the rear ones. And the slide stop slide release on this side, if I take the magazine out, does actually work if you were to do it with the right hand. So let me try that again and try it with the thumb of my other hand. It does work. Unlike some of them where the one on the other side kind of hangs up or barely works, the Glock ones do work quite well. You've got the standard Glock trigger guard, serrations on the front, curvature. The trigger guard is the same so that you can easily put trigger guard accessories on this. From a trigger perspective, it's your standard Glock trigger. It has the inertial toggle. Does have the internal drop safety, so these are drop safe, and Glocks are known to be drop safe. They take quite a bit of abuse and don't go off when you don't want them to. Let's talk about when you do want it to. So the stock trigger has kind of an average take up. and then a short, crisp, very defined wall at about 5.5 pounds. Decent reset. You're right on the wall. There's no take up to get back on the wall. Very tactile and audible reset. And then the break again. So I do like the Glock triggers. They're very predictable. They're very consistent across the lines. The only thing I do tend to do with them is I tend to polish them and put a zero connector or a minus connector on them, which I haven't done to this. This one is stock just the way it came out of the box. All that does is smooth it out, lighten it up just a hair, and just kind of contours the trigger, pull a little bit. But overall, these are ready to go out of the box. But with the aftermarket support that's out there, you can configure them any way you want to. That's one of the nice things about Glock. People will comment that people buy a Glock and then start changing things. It's kind of like a muscle car. It works out of the box, it works right off the lot, and you can customize it to fit your needs. This does have the replaceable back straps, and Glock, the frame is actually the one back strap, so you can use it with no back straps installed on it, just the frame, and it's ready to go. You've got this kind of this pyramid, truncated pyramid texture all the way around it. No finger grooves, you'll notice. There's 2 additional back straps you can get to put on here that don't add any beaver tail, and then there's 2 also that are the same overall thickness, but they also extend the beaver tail out probably to about there. So if you're somebody that's prone to getting slide bit by Glocks, you can put one of those 2 beaver tail ones on there and bring the beaver tail out to about here and kind of prevent you from getting slide bit. I've got one here. You can see what it looks like. I'll see if I can just kind of set it on here and demonstrate what it would look like. It's not fully properly installed, but you can see it brings the beaver tail really out back here. And with this particular setup, your likelihood of getting slide bit is almost 0. So that's something new they had started doing with some of the late Gen 4s, and then, of course, continued into the Gen 5s, is including those beaver tail back straps. And they do work. If that's something a problem that you're wanting to solve, they do actually work quite well. Maintenance and living with this is relatively easy. So, of course, you'd make sure it's clear. You pull the trigger. I just wrap my hand around like this and then just kind of squeeze a little bit. And all that does is takes the tension. It pulls the slide back just enough to take the tension off these 2 little pins that I'm having a little hard time with, only because I'm trying to do it on camera, not turning it the right way. If you turn it the right way so that your hand is working correctly, it's real easy to do. However, if you do have limited hand strength, there are a bunch of tools. You can get these on Amazon pretty much everywhere. And what they allow you to do is get a hold of those little tongs. You just put this on it, you squeeze and pull down on it. It makes it real easy to get a hold of it. So that is something that's available to make any Glock easier to assemble and disassemble. These do have a slightly stiffer recoil spring, so I popped it out fairly easy. It'll be a little bit more work to put it back in. This is a Gen 5, so it has an NDLC coating on the barrel itself, and you will see that you do start to see a little bit of wear even after a couple boxes of ammo. I've never seen one of these actually start to rust, but all of the Gen 5s with this coating do wear a little bit like that. It is what they're calling their marksman barrel, which is kind of a hybrid rifling. So it's a combination of regular standard rifling along with the polygonal rifling. And these do actually work pretty well. Their ramp is typical, kind of a straight ramp, slightly polished, kind of what I call machine polished. It's not polished to a mirror. These work. They feed reliably. I've never seen one of these things get ammo sensitive. Even in a lot of junk ammo, the Glocks will just eat it up. They seem to be pretty tolerant of that. Well machined slide internals. Here's your drop safety. Now this is, with the Gen 5s, they went to this kind of elongated one as opposed to the round circle. It's supposed to smooth out the trigger pull a little bit. It works just as well as the others. And there's your hook for the striker. Everything else is well machined. Now Glock doesn't do a lot of fanciness. They don't go into getting things polished and pretty. They just go for functionality. I'll put the slide back together and then I'll show you the frame. The recoil spring, you do need to give it a little bit of a push to get it to seat because it's a bit of a heavier recoil spring than, let's say, the 9mm Glock 19. Frame, pretty much what you're used to. You've got some really solid but short rails at the front, locking block here in the middle. That's the hook to disengage the drop safety. And then again, kind of stout but short rails at the back, and a relatively simple fire control group. There's not a lot going on in Glocks. They've managed to figure out how to make it work but keep it simple. And along that line, putting it back together again, assuming I lined up the recoil spring correctly, is as simple as that, and you're back in business. So they're easy to live with, they're easy to maintain. The 40 has a bit of a snappier recoil than 9mm. I don't prefer the recoil 40 as much, but it's very controllable. It's easy to keep it on target and easy to get your next follow-up shot. So overall, it does handle it well. Now from a size perspective, this is a Glock 27, and of course this one does have a trigger guard laser on it, but that really doesn't affect the dimensions that I'm going to show you. And I've got a Glock 22, so this would be the full-size equivalent, and you can see it slots right in the middle. The subcompact has got a shorter grip, shorter barrel, got the 22 right, or I'm sorry, the 23 right here in the middle, and then the 22 on the end. In the 9mm realm, this would be 26, 19, and 17. So they've kind of pretty much stuck with that pattern for the guns. So kind of like the 19 is the do-all for 9mm, 23 could be looked at as the do-all for 40. It's small enough to conceal pretty much anywhere, except maybe a pocket. And of course, with this particular one being a Gen 5, it's big enough to get a full 3-finger grip on it. Kind of the bottom of my last finger hangs off just a hair, but overall it's a 3-finger grip. So it's easy to get a hold of, but it's got a short enough grip that the grip isn't going to be difficult to hide. So if you're wanting a compact, if you're wanting something that you can get a good grip on but still easily conceal, and you're wanting to stick with 40 Smith & Wesson, the 23 would be a good choice for that. I actually think that this handles the recoil just a hair better than the Gen 4s. The slide's a little bit thicker, a little bit heavier. Just seemed to be a little less snappy than the last Gen 4 that I fired in 40 Smith & Wesson. So the Gen 5 might have that advantage, unless of course you like the finger grooves. If you like the finger grooves, then you're going to want to stick with the Gen 4 because they still include the finger grooves. For the most part, that's probably the biggest ergonomic difference between the Gen 4 and 5 is the finger grooves and the anti-slide stop, slide release. Beyond that, functionally, they're very similar. Beyond that, if you like our videos, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, click that bell to be notified if you do. Check us out on Facebook, Patreon, Instagram, Twitter, Getter, kind of everywhere, even Rumble. Thank you.